Welcome back to another episode of Cracklin' Rosie True Crime. Today we will look at the Queen's DA questioning of Berkowitz with regard specifically to the Voskerichian shooting. We will also take a look at Mr. Barlow's original witness statement back from March of 1977. Special shout out to community member and author Jack Myers for sending us that information. Thank you, Jack. We appreciate you. We'll also share and take a listen to some information that we pulled together during a little community spitball session with regards to the alleged shooting up in Yonkers of the elderly woman. We'll begin with the DA's questioning. Let's get started. Question. Now, on March 8, 1977, did you go back to that area? Yes. Do you recall the time that was? Early in the evening. Any reason why you went to the location on a weekday? I had my assignment there. Who gave you your assignment? Sam. What night of the week was it? It was a Tuesday night. And how did you get to that location? By car, same car. And what bridge did you use? I don't remember. And how did you get into the Forest Hills area? What road did you use? Queens Boulevard, and I turned off one of the side streets. Where did you park the car that night? Adjacent to the LI Railroad by the tennis courts there. Was there any meter parking there? Just regular private parking. And can you describe, incidentally, what time was it? 7 or 7:30. What happened that night when you were in that area? Just walked around all night. How long were you walking around? Maybe around an hour and a half. And then what happened? I saw Miss Voskerichian and I had to shoot her. She was coming up. We were walking in opposite directions. And what side of the street was she on? The side by the apartment buildings. And were you on the same side or the opposite side? Same side. And when you saw her, what did you do? I pulled out the gun from my pocket and I fired one shot into her face. And then what did you do after that? I turned around and ran towards my car. Do you recall what she looked like? Vaguely. Could you tell us, please? She had a long, pretty face. There was a shadow effect, long, wavy hair. Had you ever seen her before? No. And this was similar to the other incidents? You picked her at random? Yes. Is there any other reason? Sam told me to pick her. Now in relation, again, showing you this map, you see where the tennis courts are at the top? Where were you parked in relation to the tennis courts? Adjacent to the tennis courts, the same street as the railroad. Do you see Dartmouth Street in that where you saw Miss Vosker? Is that where you saw Miss Voskerichian? Yes, towards the tennis courts. Did you have to cut toward the railroad where your car was parked? Yes. Now, after you shot her and to the point that you got to your car, did you see anyone? Yes. There was an elderly man walking. I ran by him. Did you happen to see anyone jogging in the area? No, I did not. Now, can you describe the elderly man that you saw on that night? Of course, this is Mr. Barlow. I don't remember his face, just his dark clothing. I think he was wearing a hat. And where was he in relation to Dartmouth Street, or was he closer to your car? Dartmouth Street, the street near the tennis courts. Did anyone say anything at that time? I said something to him. What did you say? I said, "Hi, mister." And do you recall what, if any, type of hat he had on? Can you describe the hat? Just a hat, a dress hat, I think. And what were you wearing on that occasion? I think my ski jacket, dungarees. Were you wearing a hat? A watch cap. And what type of a hat was that? A brown watch cap. And was that in your duffel bag that was taken by the police today? Yes. Do you remember the type of evening it was, the weather conditions? Cold. And how did you leave that particular area that night? I just drove off. Do you recall how you drove off? I went down Queens Boulevard, pretty far, almost to the end, and after that I went over one of the bridges. Triborough? I don't remember. Is there any reason why you picked Queens? A lot of pretty women there. Is there any reason why the women are prettier in Queens than in any of the other locations? Just seemed that way. Was that the only occasion that you wore a hat? Yes. Was there any reason in this particular incident for why you only fired one shot at that time? That's all I needed. In other words, you knew you hit her. Yes. Was it your plan and intent to kill her on that occasion? Yes. And did you know her before that? No. Can you describe what she was wearing and doing at the time? She was just walking home from school. She had on a long coat and boots. She was carrying her books. How far from her were you when you fired? About 2 feet. Did she do anything prior to you firing the shot? She screamed slightly, and I believe she tried to raise the books. Towards the direction of the shot? Yes. And do you know where you hit her? Somewhere in the face, I couldn't tell. David, at this time, would you like to take a break? I understand you'd like to go to the bathroom. Yes. So now we're going to take a listen to the original police statement taken by Mr. Barlow in March of 1977. On this date, the undersigned interviewed the subject in front of his residence. He states that he is employed with an engineering firm and had been in Atlantic City on business earlier in the day. He states that he returned home at about 7:30. It says 1930 hours, so it's 7:30. He parked his car on Dartmouth Street and was walking east towards his residence. He heard what he thought was a firecracker and looked up towards 71st Avenue. At this time, he saw a male, white, 16 to 18 years of age, 5'8", stocky build, wearing a dark sweater, wearing a dark stocking hat with a stripe. When the youth passed, he shouted, "Oh, Jesus!" And it's redacted, but it's Mr. Barlow states that because he was walking in a lighted area, he did not pay much attention to the youth and did not see where he went after he passed him. And that's it. So this differs very much, and I'm going to look more into this to see if there's anything else available. This is what was sent to me. He doesn't talk about, he said he heard a firecracker. He doesn't talk about the detail that he gives us 2 years later with the Queen's DA. So very interesting. We'll look into this a little bit more, but I wanted you to hear that. I wanted to share that with you and get your thoughts. When we originally put out the Mr. Barlow statement, we had certainly gotten lots of comments that he sounded like a great witness. He sounded like he remembered so much detail. That was 2 years after. This report is right after the crime. So something to think about. Now we'll quickly go over the shooting up in Yonkers of the elderly woman. So David admits to this. He says he does not remember a date. When talking with the community, we were trying to put puzzle pieces together. So David purchases the semi-automatic rifle in Brooklyn on January 26, 1976. So we know that date, and we have backup for that. Then we know that he purchases the .44 caliber in Texas in June of 76. So that span of time is, to me, the key time of interest, since after the purchase of the .44, it appears that that's what David's weapon of choice was. So we're looking at February, March, April, May, June. His first shooting is July 76. So we're looking probably February. Now in June he was traveling, so I even ruled out most of June. So if this shooting actually happened in Yonkers, I'm thinking it would have been February through May of 1976. My gut tells me it was more like February or March, but just something to think about. Another important detail that was brought out by one of our community members was David loved to get the newspaper. He liked to read about the crimes the next day, whether it was just to summarize what happened or whether the victims died from the crime, from the shootings. I don't know, but we know that he liked to read the paper. And when the DA asked him if she died, he didn't say, I don't know. He said no. So could there have been some coverage in the Yonkers papers that David read and he saw that there was an incident, but the lady was either had a minor injury or wasn't injured? Something to think about. So if anybody has found any information on this, please contact the channel. It's very interesting. We did have some comments. Well, they didn't go that deep into it. Well, a member of law enforcement told me that they were questioning him about an actual murder in Brooklyn, and that obviously was what was important when we were reading that section of the questioning. And Yonkers is Yonkers, and the woman wasn't killed. They asked a few questions and then moved on. That wasn't of major importance to them at that moment when they were actually questioning him on the Moskowitz shooting at that time. So I know a few of you made that comment, and I made it in my head too, and that was clarified for me, so that makes sense. So again, any information on that, share it with us if you'd like to discuss it. Also, I hope that you got something out of that information. Tell me your thoughts on the original witness statement from Mr. Barlow and the statement taken 2 years later by the Queen's DA. Very interesting. As always, I'm so grateful that you're spending time with me. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and until the next one, thank you. Have a great day.